Okay. Dear friends, experts, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to join this session 1.2, Rural Clean Energy, a crucial solutions for NDCs under the Asia Clean Energy Forum. As you may know very well, Paris Agreement requests all parties to commit their greenhouse gas emission mitigation efforts through their national determined contributions, NDC, that's NDC. So how parties can achieve their NDC goals while they have to develop their economy, which will demand more energy, and this will be a bigger challenge. In particular for developing member countries, they need more energy to develop their economy. Rural energy in most developing countries will experience rapid development as their economy and social development is advancing, and accordingly, energy consumption will also increase greatly, which may lead to more pollutant emissions and also more greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, will impact their efforts in meeting the goals of NDCs. So how rural energy would develop? For instance, more clean and low carbon development, or highly rely on fossil fuel, or other ways will be very crucial for a country to meet their goals of NDCs. This is what this session will discuss. In fact, clean rural energy development has been a key part of ADB support to its developing member countries in past years. Clean development of rural energy will not only support the local economic development, but also reduce air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, and also protect the health. But rural clean energy development, for sure, will also face greater challenges. As you can see that its development actually quite behind those development in the larger cities. So this including those technology challenge, finance, institution, and so on. So I wish that the speakers and panel members of this session can share their thoughts and their wisdom on how to address those challenges. We are very proud that to have a very strong team of speakers for this session. Now let me introduce one by one. We have Mr. Chen Hui Wang, the Director of Rural Energy Center from Ministry of Agriculture of China. And Mr. Wang has been engaged in international cooperation on this rural energy for a long time. Actually, he's now leading a project, a GF project for support the rural sustainable agricultural development and market transformation of energy efficiency bricks and rural buildings in China. We have Mr. David Hanin, Director PT Resco Samba Terong from Indonesia. I hope my pronunciation is okay. Mr. Hanin has more than 10 years of experience in rural electrification. Currently, he is managing a demonstration project with a mentality program to Foreign and Commonwealth Office in Indonesia. Next is Mrs. Sveta Ka, Manager Mandanand Ashram from India. Ms. Ka is an active social worker and associated with non-profit organization running old age homes for the destitute and homeless in Western UP and also in the Uttarakhand, India. She also has very rich experience in the renewable energy development. Next is Mr. Len Georgia, Senior Energy Specialist Energy Division of the Pacific Department of ADB, one of my colleagues. And Mr. Georgia is focal for energy operations in Maldives. He has worked on renewable energy regional connectivity and electricity network investments in South Asia for the last 10 years. So very experienced. Finally, but not of course not least, but very important, we have Mr. Mong Udin. He is the Major General and also the Chairman, Bangladesh Rural Electrification Board, Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources of Bangladesh. Mr. Udin actually has joined the Bangladesh Rural Electrification Board as chairman from 2011. He served in also many army units in various command, staff, and also instructional appointments at various capacities. So he commanded 2 army units as major and colonel respectively. So you can see we have very diversified and also excellent speakers from different countries in this region. I strongly believe their experience, their wisdom will benefit a lot to all. And I hope that I really looking forward that to their very informative and innovative presentations. I actually, maybe finally, I introduce myself. I will be the moderator for this session. I'm Xue Du Lü. I'm now working in Asian Development Bank as a climate change specialist in East Asia Department. I have been working in ADB for about 10 years. Actually, recently I'm doing many those rural energy projects. So I have some thinking on this. I believe that this rural energy really very important from my point of view for achieving these NDCs of developing member countries. With this, may I maybe just go down to the first speak. I'm not sure if Mr. Wang has prepared, or maybe we just start from the from Mr. Hannin while Mr. Wang is still preparing. Mr. Hannin, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, for a very nice introduction. Allow me to start with thanking ADB for this opportunity. Today's presentation, I will focus on rural electrification powered by photovoltaic in Indonesia, which mainly driven by the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, or MEMR, specifically looking at the challenge and also lesson learned from this program. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that this presentation is derived through a combination of research and also my work through several organizations such as HIVOS, GIZ, photovoltaic in Indonesia has started since 2012, and now over the span of 5 years in 2017, why I stopped in 2017, there will be more explanation later on. The MEMR has actually successfully commissioned nearly 700 units of PV power plant, which are off-grid with capacity of 10 to 100 kilowatt peak in almost all regions in Indonesia. You can see on the map, it's all over Indonesia. Moreover, the system replaces CO2 emission from diesel generators. Otherwise, people will rely on diesel generators. And the program went through several, at least 3 battery storage generation, starting from the simple one, which is lead acid, to the more of smart and complicated one, which is lithium ion. So this program has been gaining a huge momentum in just 5 years, considering the geographic challenge of Indonesia, span over 5,000 kilometers west to east And as you can see from these pictures, with a very limited infrastructure, as soon as you reach eastern Indonesia, things getting worse. So considering these achievements, I think we are very proud of this achievement so far. Hence, the challenge remains to be discussed regarding leveraging or sustaining this effort in the future. Now, to give you a bit of an overview of the program success relies not only through the Minister of Energy and Renewable Energy, but also through the provincial government, because by law, the provincial government in Indonesia has that mandate to energy sector. So even though the feasibility study and proposal coming from the government, the whole process is running to the Minister of Energy. This is example from the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources. But at the end, the project will be handed over to provincial government to be later on managed by local operators, mostly known as kelompok masyarakat or community organizations, or in Indonesia, we love the abbreviation, it's called POKMAS. Now, why I make a box on this section? Because this is the interesting part where we actually facing a lot of challenge since they are not clearly defined, and there has been some mandate offer from district level to provincial level in 2014 that actually complicated the matters of managing these PV power plants. Now, the challenge, the main concern is like the one that I already put it on the box before, is these community groups do not, or organizations do not have a strong legal establishment to begin with, which then doesn't fit into the overall village financial and management structure or programming structure. This often creates conflict within the community or with the village administration over transparency of tariff collections. Some doesn't want to pay the tariff anymore because simply because they are too expensive, or specifically they are not regulated, for example. So the tariff is an interesting one, and specifically under scrutiny, because at the end of the day, people will always compare the tariff they pay with similar service. In this case is a service provider. In this case is the national utility company. And all research shows that the community sees this more from the point of view of egalitarian principle of paying the same tariff with their other brothers and sisters in other part of Indonesia. So that's why we ask again whether the community-based organization concept is actually something that we can actually promote even further. Now, the main lesson learned, I've listed 3 main lessons learned for this presentation. The first one is I would like to point out on the issue of leadership. Very often we heard about, especially through development sector, about community-based projects requirement to create community ownership. But what we have learned is that more than importantly is the leaderships, and creating this leadership in PV management in the context of remote areas are really, really hard, because of course, this is require simply not only 1 year intervention when the PV installation is started, and also it is hard to find such figures in the remote context. So even though there are several leaders who arise from this PV management system or overall renewable energy off-grid in Indonesia, the success case are very rare. I would like to point out few people who are very, very stand out. Mr. Umbu Hinggu in Sumba, he's successfully managed several renewable energy facilities. Also, Ms. Nupara in Karimun, and 2 others. This is a Mr. Ramsa in East Kalimantan. It's very remote. The community is moving around along the river, and he successfully also managed his PV. And there are other two excellent examples from East Nusa Tenggara, which are Mr. Adhar and also Mr. Rusni. So the success story do exist in this sense of leadership, but we really need to study this more on how to basically promote and grow this leadership type of leadership through this PV system management. Now, the second lesson learned that I like to highlight is we often hear of smart meter, smart battery system, etc. But we forgot that working with a community-based organization means we are working with limited capacity to begin with. The challenge, of course, is lack of or limited STEM background individuals within the village, especially in remote Indonesia, which then raise the need of training program. So in a nutshell, the technology advancement should also be followed by support from government or another stakeholder to provide a continuous training. This is one of the main concerns that has been highlighted over our survey or studies. Otherwise, the government can actually start to promote or engage private sector to grow operational and maintenance sector in remote areas. Lastly, is largely criticized in this program is post-installation. The issue of post-installation has gained huge attention in Indonesia, and this boils down into concern of maximizing the lifetime of the systems. We've learned two main root causes, which are the program is focused on short-term outputs, which then limit other post-installation aspect that I listed in these slides. In a way, the national government puts this responsibility to the provincial government, and unfortunately, the provincial government is not ready. The second is the complicated budgeting and bureaucracy between minister and various government bodies at the national and also at the local government. Make things even harder. So one of the main concern is who's to finance the major hardware replacement for these communities, for example, because simply relying on tariff is not enough. And when you engage in such discussion, you pretty much sink into this difficult coordination between ministers and government bodies. So to respond to this lesson learned, we believe that the program, although has generated a huge success, still needs to be reformed to allow a better transfer of knowledge, better coordination, better program structures, allows innovative financing and gain more leverage from the provincial government. And above all, there is also a huge need for innovation beyond technology. So much of these problems, the challenge, the lesson learned that we gain actually beyond technology itself. So on the coordination side, definitely coordination between the ministers and also national and provincial government is a huge homework to do. And we believe that this can be done, but it requires close coordination between the ministries. Now, I'd like to end my presentation by saying that although rural electrification through photovoltaic in Indonesia contribute less than 1% of the total capacity of installed renewable energy in Indonesia, the impact is more and beyond the reduction of carbon emissions, but also we are talking about job creation at the rural areas, increased energy release resilience, adoption of modern appliance for these remote communities, as well as improve their livelihood. And this, if the program continues onward, this also will benefit more than 2,000 villages in Indonesia that currently still in the dark. So that's all for my presentation. I put some reference here for the future reading. Thank you very much, and looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hannon. Excellent. I believe your experience will be really high value to many other. They are now promoting this rural energy development. I guess your summary of those 5 recommendations are quite good. Okay, let us move to next.
I'm a staff with ADB's Pacific Regional Department. Though before this, I was previously working for over 10 years with ADB's South Asia Department. So here today, what I'll do is I'll briefly talk about an intervention that ADB supported in India in the state of Maharashtra, which is one of the largest states in the country. So this was our first results-based lending program to support rural access in the electricity sector. And I'll take you through some of what we had done under that program in this presentation. Again, just briefly for some of you who may not have the context on the on the Indian electricity sector, the World Energy Outlook in 2018 indicated there were about 1 billion people across the planet who did not have access to electricity. What was positive about that number is it's probably the lowest it's ever been since electricity was available to mankind. So we've had less than 1 billion people without access. Roughly a third of that was in Asia, and of that, about half was in India, based on this World Energy Outlook study. India and Bangladesh in Asia were the 2 largest countries with unelectrified populations based on this. And both countries have been taking big steps to support move towards 100% electrification. So in India, the program that the government had launched was Saubhagya, which was focused on 100% household electricity connections. They have now achieved that figure in 2019, 2020. And now the focus is also on supporting agricultural customers, particularly for irrigation requirements, to improve their access. Again, just for context, India has been plagued by this significant difference between average cost of supply and average revenue realized. And that's something that's been targeted to be bridged to improve the financial performance of the electricity utilities. A lot of this is being done through interventions around metering customers. There are also better mechanisms to estimate sales. And then the government of India has been putting in financial support mechanisms to improve the performance of the utilities. Some of the interventions that they've been focusing on include the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Yojana for rural access, IPDS on the urban sector, and Uday, which is a program to improve the financial performance. Finally, in terms of agriculture and the interlinkages between agriculture, electricity, and water, what's interesting here is 2 points. One is that groundwater-based irrigation has grown from nothing in 1947 to roughly 2/3 of irrigation in India in 2016. However, a large part of this still remains unmetered, and it's difficult to estimate what's the actual consumption. This, when coupled with free or subsidized part of agriculture, has a significant impact on utility financial performance. If you see the graph on the left, you'd note that there's nearly about $9 billion of electricity subsidy to the power sector in India, and that's one of the largest subsidies that are currently being provided, which the government is trying to now rationalize and make make the utilities more accountable for some of these transactions. And that's through a focus on HVDS, metering, efficient pumps, and direct benefit transfer programs. So in the context of what ADB was supporting in India, there is of course a national program where there is an NDC kind of commitment of moving to 175 gigawatts of solar and wind and other forms of renewable energy by 2022. There is, of course, the Power for All program that I just mentioned, and several other programs. India has also committed to bringing down its energy sector emissions by 30-35% by 2030, which would require a significant shift to renewable energy, particularly solar and wind. Estimates are it would need about 40% of installed capacity by 2030. This from a base of zero in about 2009 is a significant scale up on renewables. What I'll do is I'll briefly just cover some of the interventions in terms of what ADB has been supporting. Maharashtra is as I said, one of the largest states in India. Mumbai is the capital city of the state, and if you notice on the map, the leftmost side, which is the coastal area, comprises about 10% of the area and is responsible for 40% of the economic output. However, as you move to the interiors, particularly as you go to Amravati and Vidarbha, which is basically part of the Nagpur division, you would see that the population and area, the area is almost 15%, 17%, but these contribute far less to economic output. And that's one of the concerns that the state government in Maharashtra has been trying to address over the last several years. If you look at variations in electricity consumption, Vidarbha and Marathwada regions were about 600 to 700 units of electricity per capita in about 2014, which was less than half of what the rest of the state and particularly cities like Mumbai or Delhi would be consuming. The world average is probably closer to about 3,000 units per capita. So it's in that context that the state came up with a program. They came up with their Vision 2030 plan, which was focusing on how the agricultural sector, which contributes to 50% of employment and 12% of output, could be made better in terms of its economic output. You'd notice average landholding size is 1.4 hectares. So farms are small, yields are low, yields are variable, and there's a heavy dependence on rainfall for irrigation. And therefore, the focus has been to shift towards higher value crops, improving productivity and the area under agriculture. Where ADB comes in, and this is essentially the program that we supported, is if you look at the conventional distribution grid for farmers in Maharashtra, pre-HVDS or pre-intervention from ADB supported interventions, you had essentially a large coal-based a large coal-based kind of fossil fuel-based production schedule, and transformers that provided electricity to about 20 pumps, and there were significant low voltage lines and voltage drops, as well as issues with metering and power supply. What we are now looking at replacing that with is HVDS, which ADB is funding through a loan program. So you notice the lines in red. There's of course a lot of distributed solar PV that's being put in place in the rural feeders, 1 to 3 megawatts for every solar feeder. It's called a solar feeder program. And finally, at the distribution end, we're also looking at the consumer end, we're also looking at programs to support improving the pump efficiency as well as reduced water usage. So those are the broader set of interventions that are being supported in rural Maharashtra. And again, just to give a snapshot, those are the 4 interventions. The second one is what ADB is funding through a loan program. The first one is funded through the private sector. And the third and fourth programs are also being taken up by the state. They're being anchored with national agencies such as the Energy Efficiency Services Limited. But these would be taken in the form of a pilot to show the cumulative benefit of these interventions. And this essentially results in significant benefits to the government in terms of, state government in terms of better management of electricity and water consumption, as well as reduced subsidy burden. There's a displacement of diesel pumps where they are used, and also adoption of more efficient pumps with solar energy coming in as an input. And there are mechanisms being discussed to ensure there's avoidance or overuse of groundwater. So ADB has come in through long tenor loans. We are supporting a program of nearly $350 million in the state of Maharashtra to take forward this first results-based lending program. The focus is on moving away from inputs to demonstrated outputs such as metering, billing, voltage improvement, and reduced failures. So disbursements are linked to achieving some of those targets. And finally, I mean, I'll just quickly rush through this because this is more of factual information. But what we're also looking at under the program is a pilot where we're looking at taking forward the 100% HVDS feeder with efficient pumps and efficient water usage to try and see how much the electricity usage could reduce from the business as usual. So as you see in the graph, we're trying to see if this could roughly halve based on efficiencies in the distribution grid, efficiencies on the pump, and reduced water usage. And therefore, there are partnerships being discussed and capacity building work being done on looking at energy and water metering and monitoring to support mechanisms for farmers to actually reduce their consumption of electricity while still trying to maintain a certain income level. Thank you. So that was briefly about the program that we have just recently got approved in the Indian state of Maharashtra. I'm happy to stop here, and I'm happy to come back at a later point on any discussion issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Georgia, for sharing that program with all of us. Yeah, that will be really very useful that for the others to know how ADB support will provide those in particular value addition to our DMCs for solve those problems. Okay, let us maybe move to next.
A very pleasant good morning to all of you. Can you hear all? A very pleasant good morning to all of you and all present here. Firstly, I would like to thank Asia Clean Energy Forum for giving me the opportunity to share my experience of reducing power consumption in the old age homes we manage before an international audience. We are presenting our presentation and explaining myself. I am presenting reducing energy consumption in rural hinterland and hilly terrain. Here we have an hands-on experience in running 2 old age homes located in Western UP and Uttarakhand. There is 2 old age homes we are running. There we are primarily getting at old and destitute peoples. We don't charge anything from inhabitants. Funding from charity and volunteers. We are primarily offering old age homes, old age people, those who don't have any resources. We are funding from charity and from people who want to donate themselves. We are very limited resources also. Is it okay? Is it fine for all? There are some characteristics of rural hinterland and remote hilly terrain. Electricity reliability is a matter of concern. Low capacity to pay. Higher utility response time. In case of breakdown, repairing replacement of renewable energy equipment is very difficult. Consumer education. On the education point of view, we are very much conscious on consumer education. Safeguard from monkeys and vandalism. There are lots of vandalism in UP, Western UP. So we are making many of safeguards from monkeys and vandalism. We use solar PV generation, like 3-4 units per day, 7 kilowatt plant. Instead of normal batteries, we use lead acid batteries used for storage. We use manually in house cleaning of panels. Electricity bills have reduced by 20 to 32%. These are some solar panels in our area. Now, energy efficiency measures. Instead of normal lights, tube lights, we use 7-watt LEDs. Instead of normal ceiling fans, we use 35-watt. BDCM fan. Use of motion sensors in few applications because they take very less of money and very less of electricity. Increased use of natural light. We have many doors and many windows for natural light. Now we use biofuel for cooking applications because cow dung is used partially for cooking applications. Biofuel is very easy to take in remote areas, so we use cow dung. Improvised stove used for cooking reduces waste disposal. Low smoke, improved aesthetics. We use solar water heater instead of light and everything. We use solar water heater for hot water applications because in Uttarakhand, many of the time in the year is very cold atmosphere. So we use hot water application or like solar water heater. Preheats water by 10 degrees Celsius. Large storage tanks for storing warm water. We have very large storage tanks for storing warm water. Government subsidy available, energy conversion efficiency more than 50%. We want to energy conversion efficiency more than 50%. Especially useful in hilly region where hot water is required for 8 months in a year. Just I told you that in hilly areas, there is very cold weather. That's why we use hot water. These are solar water heaters. From this, we use hot waters and now I am sharing our ongoing efforts to use lithium-ion batteries in place of lead-acid batteries. I want to use lithium-ion batteries because lead-acid batteries are giving very more expense. If price becomes competitive, when next replacement becomes due. To use natural air draft for cooling of premises. For cooling of our premises, we use natural air draft. To install a small wind turbine. I want to install a small wind turbine in our area. Net zero consumption. Difficult but nevertheless not unachievable. Now, what was learned from this? Storage batteries coupled with smart grid provide symbiotic benefits for consumers as well as incumbent public utility. Storage batteries coupled with smart grid provide symbiotic benefits for consumers as well as incumbent public utility. Energy efficiency played a big role in reducing power consumption and thereby reducing peak demand as well as energy consumption. Modifications These I want to change. These I want to learn. Focus on proper upkeep of batteries and solar panels of utmost importance. Now I want to replicate it. Low-cost prospective model where it can be deployed for the benefit of community centers, old age homes, and orphanages in the developing countries. Locally available energy efficient building solutions. Rural communities are quick to adapt. Now these are some benefits expected. Expected to reduce electricity consumption by about 20 to 32% for the consumers. After this or that, now the electricity consumption will be 20 to 32% for the consumers. Utility to gain by reduction in peak demand. In peak days, there is a utility to gain by reduction. Habit formation. Energy saving becomes a habit. Scaling up. Easy to replicate once a successful model becomes visible. Suggestions. Involvement of local people, self-sufficient. Communities is not the sole responsibility of the government, nor can it be achieved without involving the interested consumers. Economic benefits are immense of using solar storage plus energy efficiency. Scaling up the model will yield sustainable result for the electricity distribution utilities. Now, thank you for presenting me this this presentation. Thank you so much.
Our respected moderator, presenters, panelists, and dear audience, good afternoon. I am from Bangladesh. It's a great pleasure for me to join you. I thank ADB to invite me. Congratulations to the presenters for their excellent presentations. But I am limited with only 3 minutes time. I may exceed for 1 minute more, I am not sure. However, I will share NDC goals, actions, and achievements in Bangladesh. Before that, I hope that you are fine and safe from COVID-19. To remove the disparity between urban and rural areas in Bangladesh, our great constitution in 1972 mandated access of electricity at every doorstep, which is unique in the world. It gives a guarantee that the rural development is not neglected since our independence in 1971. Accordingly, Bangladesh Rural Electrification Board, in short we call REB, was set up to electrify rural parts. In 2009, we had only 10 million people connected with grid electricity, that is 30% coverage out of 160 million people. Now it is 37 million, including 5.8 million solar home system, which is the highest in the world. And we have 97% coverage with a generation of capacity 24,000 megawatt. Remaining 3% mainly of grid and hilly areas will be covered hopefully by this year. It came into reality because of the roadmap designed by our Honorable Prime Minister, which is electricity for all by 2021. Commonly it is known as the Sheikh Hasina Initiative and Vision 2021. That is our milestone for the rural people and being implemented by REB. In every month, REB is connecting more than 300,000 consumers for last 5 years. It has impact on strengthening rural economy, women empowering, attaining food sufficiency, and reaching national GDP and poverty alleviation. It was possible because of strong national will, visionary leadership, innovative initiatives, and aggressive postures. Government of Bangladesh has adopted the renewable energy policy of Bangladesh 2009 to scale up and attract investment and targeted to generate 10% of the total electricity generation from renewable resources by 2021. The country is also committed to implement SDG 7 and has set up a special coordination wing in Prime Minister's office in this regard. To promote, develop, and coordinate renewable energy and energy efficiency programs, a nodal agency known as Sustainable and Renewable Energy Development Authority in short SREDA, has been enacted and in operation since 2014. So far, we have 630 megawatt renewable energy, including hydro, wind, biomass, biogas, solar rooftop, solar irrigation pumps, mini grids, street lights, solar charging stations, solar boats, and 5.8 million solar home system. 11 solar parks of capacity 640 megawatt are under construction, and more 19 are under planning of capacity 1800 megawatt by Power Development Board, we call PDB. Till today, 1400 solar irrigation pumps have been installed by ITCOL. It is a government-owned company in Bangladesh. More 2,000 solar pumps are under installations by REB with ADB and SREF fund. Country has a target to install 50,000 solar pumps by 2025. REB has installed 4,000 solar street lights and solar nanogrids to support more than 1 million displaced Myanmar nationals in Bangladesh, what we call Rohingya, funded by ADB. At this moment, REB has 6 ADB-funded running rural projects. We thank the bank. Bangladesh has formulated net metering guideline 2018 to promote rooftop, solar, and grid integration to encourage free space utilization. So far, 900 systems have been installed of capacity 13 megawatt. 3 to 10% solar energy generation is mandatory for consumers with grid power consumptions more than 2 kilowatt. All these are aimed to promote rural areas and meeting NDC goals. Energy is identified as one of the major contributors for emission reduction. We have taken action plans such as subcritical to supercritical coal generation, conversion of simple cycle power plant to combined cycle, and waste heat recovery. However, investment, technology, and land constraints are the main challenges in Bangladesh. Being a non-emitter, it is vulnerable and most suffering, but showing its leadership in mitigation measures, it stands as global champion to tackle adverse impacts of climate changes. Definitely, development partners like ADB and developed countries are to support countries like Bangladesh. Thanks to all. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Major General Udin, for your really very informative introduction on the renewable energy development in Bangladesh. Really, the deep impression on all of us. And also, thank you very much for this really very good cooperation between the ADB and then the government of Bangladesh for those the energy development. Okay. So now one question to Mr. Udin, Major General Udin. Given little progress on the NDCs in Bangladesh, how can this 5.8 million SHS be used for the national grid as a clean feed-in with a community PPA for the poor people? So this is question to Udin. I don't know if you can do I need to repeat the question?
Please repeat it, please.
Okay. So given little progress on the NDCs in Bangladesh, how can these 5.8 million SHS be used for the national grid as a green feed-in with a community PPA for the poor people? I also see a question for the Mr. David Hannin.
Yes, I can see.
Maybe you can be prepared while Udin is answering his question. The question is, where did the fund majorly come from? Did it cover the operation and management cost as well, or did it become a commercial entity? Do I need to repeat, or you got it?
It's all good. I can see it on the chat. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Major General Woodin, can now floor to you.
Thank you very much for the question about your 5.8 million your solar home system. This is the highest number ever, highest number in the world, as I know. So these are your installed in the remote areas, especially in the hilly areas under our Hill Tracks ministry. Then you're in the remote, in the Chor and islands under the local government, but these are your standalone of small capacity, your 20 to 30 30 watt each for your lighting and fan or cooling purpose.
Okay, thank you.
cool.
Mr. Hanin, you
Yes.
maybe take the second question.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the questions. The project or the program through the ministers are actually funded through the public fund. So it's 100% through government tenders and stuff like that. The projects, when it's commissioned, it's then handed over to the provincial government with the expectation that the provincial government will taking care of these installations. Unfortunately, there is a confusion and unclarity on these budget provisions, and also unclear rules and regulation between the two entities leave the O&M cost is uncovered. So at the moment, a majority of these PV installations are actually relying on tariff to basically finance their O&M. The discussions with the government, of course, is there are two. Whether we can actually come up with a scheme that can effectively mobilizing the public fund through several ministers, for example, or between national and local government. This is something that we need to set up, and unfortunately hasn't been set up. Or secondly, the government can develop public-private partnership with private sector to allows this private sector to taking over the O&M or post-installation aspects of this PV power plants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I think there are some common questions or common challenges to the rural energy development. Maybe I think we still have some time. We have a half hour. I really appreciate very much for all the speakers that to maintain your time, so we have enough time for discussion. I, as a moderator, also have a lot of. I want to really say I want to know more from all of you related to this rural energy development. Here, there's some maybe I just I can impose those questions to all of you, and then to hear your views or wisdoms on those. You can see this one that is common. I guess I would impose to all. Is that how do we ensure that building clean energy sources in rural area will not impact environment? Because actually you can see the conflict between this biomass energy and also against this deforestation and so on, or ecosystem disruption, and also this conflict between this biomass energy and also this food supply, as well as economical activities great as a result of this electrification in rural area. All this is a part of the question, meaning that how to address or deal with this conflict, of rural energy development with other aspects, environmental, food security, and also deforestation and so on. One part question. Second part question, I really want to know more that all of you have very good experience and lessons and in particular practical experience. Now, there are some very good success case you also share with us. I believe you also you may also face, or you may also have heard a lot some failure cases. So I believe those success cases have quite a similar feature: strong leadership, there's good policy, good governance, good leadership, good ownership, and so on. But for failure cases, maybe the reason is quite different. Even sometimes those failure cases, those lessons from failure cases will be more useful to policymakers, to other experts, for them to promote rural energy development in the area. If you all can share something, those something lessons, also maybe I guess that will be even also quite useful. If I can also maybe add one more question, is that when you talk about the challenge, I heard a lot this say lack of money, lack of financial. This is always a question. Now, also technology, this is also an issue. Now, except all these two, technology and finance, what would be the most important one or two other element, other factors that for promoting this rural energy development? As energy and the money is always the number one issue. There's no doubt. But if you would be assigned as the head in one area, you will be asked to promote rural energy development. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough technology. What you can do in that area for promoting rural energy development, also clean and low carbon rural energy development. So that I believe also audience may wish to learn a lot. I would like to hear your experts' views. Let me maybe start from Henning, that you are the first. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for the questions. I guess for the first questions, when we are looking at the PV development in rural areas, one of the main concerns will be the waste, or what is it again? Decommissioning. Yeah. So the waste is the big problems. You are talking about Indonesian landscape, small islands, far away from harbor, and etc. So potentially in the near future, these PV installations will actually produce waste to the local or rural community. So this is one thing that we are very, very aware of. It's a chicken and egg situation when you are talking about rural electrification, whether you want to have 10 years of the battery system, for example, like a lithium ion or lead acid, that easy to be transferred, for example, to the smelter. So there always been a discussion on which one is the best one. But what we want to emphasize is for rural electrification to start looking at the regulation regarding the waste disposal and start to plan ahead. These problems may arise in the next 5 to 10 years, depends on what type of technology that we use. And very often the regulation on waste management are very, very difficult. It requires certain transport this waste, certain permits, which definitely you won't get it in the rural areas to begin with. So that's one main concern. On your questions about failure, we actually learned a lot that when you are talking about smart technology, it doesn't necessarily fit into the rural context, because it very much depends on existing infrastructures, like whether there is a communication network on place, or whether actually these areas can be reached on certain season, for example. So those are the questions that were taken into the account. And very often we deploy a huge amount of smart battery system, for example, and then 80% of the location we cannot reach after 2 months because someone actually forgot about the satellite positioning and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So be careful on choosing the technology. Smart doesn't necessarily also fit into the context of rural settings. And lack of money, it's heavily discussed, of course. But for Indonesian context, we've seen that better mobilization of public fund is the key to this sustaining of this rural electrification program, because you have Minister of Energy who can actually invest on the technology. You have other minister, for example, the Minister of Disadvantaged Regions, who can actually invest on productive use of energy. You have other ministers like Minister of Cooperative who also can put additional inputs into these existing facilities and adding up to the whole, adding up nicely into this whole program. So that's the main concern. Innovation, it's always comes into the discussion when we discuss about rural electrification in Indonesia, because the ministers or even provincial governments always focus on output, right? So we want to reach 100% electrification ratio by 2025. So what happened is we deploy as much as technology without a consideration of, hey, we actually can innovate after certain years. So don't stop on installing the PV installation, but looking into the possibility of innovations, including, like, I think Bangladesh has several excellent example before on setting up rural electrification board, setting up government own companies to look after this rural electrification, or even have initiate a public partnership with startup companies, young people in remote areas. A lot of them actually are into renewable energy and willing to invest and try out this renewable energy solution for their hometown. That's to answer all of the questions. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Hanin. Thank you very much for your very innovative thoughts on those. Maybe can I hear the wisdoms from our Major General Udin?
Thank you very much. I will you discuss something else. We have your 5.8 million your solar home system. It is the story of your before 6-7 years when we have only 30% grid connections. Now your grid power generation is huge, 24,000 megawatts or more, where we need about 60-70% of your installed capacity. So Bangladesh is a compact country with over 160 million people. The remote area, what we say is not that remote. It was remote in the sense that we did not have the grid power there. So there are people who purchased your renewable energy, your standalone, your solar home system at higher cost. It is your about Bangladeshi taka 30 per unit, 30 taka per unit. If you say in cents, it is your about 38 cents. It is about 38 cents. Whereas if you buy it from grid, it is only 5 cents. So if you compare, the cost of your solar one is about 6 times, and you are saying that it is for your rural people, those who are comparatively poorer society in the society. So it's a great challenge for those people. Number one. Number two, we have your project with ADB that is for you 2,000 your solar pumps. We have gone for your tendering and received your bidding, and we have gone for your bidding process. What we have seen Firstly, the project is your 50% your loan from ADB and Bangladesh government, and 50% or something more from your grant from loan 50% and grants from your SEF fund 50% plus little bit more. So once we have gone for your business model, we find that the cost is too high. The people, those who wants to take it, want to take it, in the first installment they have to give huge money, whereas if they go for your grid power, because it is available now, they have to give less money. So it is a big question for REB or for me, how to implement the project of 2,000 your solar pumps that is funded by your ADB. So we have suggested an ADB to use all your grant money for capital portion, so that the cost reduces and it can be made your lucrative, attractive to the consumers. Though we are trying to make it to connect it through your grid connection, so that they can sell their power at a fixed rate, but it is yet to be formulated by the government. Even though if we can do that, then it can be viable, cost effective. On the other hand, if we can use it for multi-purpose, for example, if you do not have your need for watering, in that case you can use for your rice husking or for your cold storage purpose. If you have that option, in that case it can be made viable. Otherwise, it is a great question to get to 2,000 your irrigation consumers where you have available grid power at lower cost.
Yeah, thank you very much, Major General Udin, for sharing your thoughts. Next, can I hear this source from Len?
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Yes, I think this has been a very interesting set of discussions, and again, just in terms of what more could be looked at. I think what Chairman Udin had mentioned is very relevant. So in South Asia, you see an access problem, particularly with countries like India and Bangladesh over the last 10 years. They've made huge strides on access, but if you look at the baseline about 10 years ago, there were probably about 200, 300 million people in India. And a very large number of people in Bangladesh. I think Bangladesh had about 47% access in 2009. And both these countries have embarked on very aggressive plans to electrify customers, predominantly because electricity is no longer seen as something that it's actually being seen as something that spurs socioeconomic development in rural areas, and there are a lot of multiplier effects with electricity. So if 15 or 20 years ago, an investment decision was made based on whether it would be financially remunerative to make, to extend the grid, that's no longer really the driving force for some of the investments that we're seeing, particularly on rural electrification. At the same time, over the last 10 years, we've seen this major push on renewable energy. It's happened more in places like India and Bangladesh with the solar home system program. But then the risk that comes in, and this is something that Bangladesh is talking about, it's also happening in Sri Lanka, it's happening in other places, is about the risk of stranding a lot of these assets that were once seen as basic requirements in remote areas, particularly as the grid comes in. And therefore, it's not so much a question of financing. It's also a question of what's the contingency plan, what's the exit, what is the risk that financiers, particularly private capital, is taking when they come in, and other ways of securing that private capital. Now, in terms of what's needed beyond just technology and finance, couple of thoughts in terms of some of the work that we've been doing in the South Asian region. We've had the pleasure to work with Bangladesh on one of their larger programs. We supported a $600 million program 2 years ago, a large part of which was with BREB to support their distribution grid and ensure that they're able to work towards the Vision 2021 target of 100% access. I talked about the Maharashtra work that we have been doing in India. And one thing, and a couple of things that come to mind. One is in terms of the role of institutions, particularly for rural electrification related work. Uh, you see these debates about the need to centralize versus decentralize, which is more than that. It's also about how much of standardization can be brought in, particularly on elements such as design, on procurement, on financing, on recovery mechanisms, and how much of customization is needed really at the last mile end for the connect to the customer, to be able to ensure that the programs being designed are useful for them. So that's a very interesting question. I was particularly interested in how Indonesia was doing it, to see how this has been happening across the islands. And even in Bangladesh, if you look at how maybe probably about 40 years ago, there was the plan to set up the Rural Electrification Board, and how that kind of took on the role of ensuring that electrification can happen outside the major cities of Dhaka and Khulna, and how they've kind of grown using that model. So I see there's an important debate that needs to happen on the role of institutions, particularly government agencies, and where they could bring in efficiencies around design, procurement, and some of the common features. BREB has been doing a great job. They've been able to keep losses at very low levels. It's a benchmark in the South Asian region. We're also seeing the similar discussions happening in India now, particularly with the adoption of HVDS in rural areas. We are seeing a lot of work happening on energy efficiency. That's again being run through EESL. So that's one feature in terms of how do you kind of take these programs forward, and therefore consequently what's the role of the public sector and the private sector. The other interesting element that comes in, particularly on rural electrification work, is oftentimes one notices a very siloed approach. Just for example, if someone were looking at access to agricultural customers, well, you could potentially be talking to the energy department in a state, you could be talking to the water department, you could be talking to the agricultural department, there's probably a rural development department, and then of course the finance department, which pays all the bills. And oftentimes you end up with silos where people have narrower objectives, whereas if one really wanted to address the electrification problem in a bigger way, particularly keeping the NDCs in mind, a slightly different approach would be needed. And I think in a lot of places you're seeing that discussion happening. When ADB went in to meet the finance department in the state of Maharashtra a couple of years ago, their main concern was, they have the largest number of farmers in any state in India. They're the largest distribution utility, and they were spending close to $1 billion in subsidy every year just for agricultural customers. And their concern was, how do we rationalize this? How do we account for this? What could be done to ensure that farmers get a certain level of electricity that's adequate for their cropping requirements, and at the same time there are means of getting them to meter and pay for this and rationalize. So that's I think the other discussion in terms of trying to break silos and trying to understand the value when you kind of integrate energy efficient pumps with drip irrigation, with high voltage distribution, with distributed solar. You're potentially talking to several different ministries, all of which need to see value in something like this coming to them. And so that's an important conversation to have. Finally, I would actually think what helped in is particularly with the approach of trying to break silos. It's really about trying to support intensive data collection and using data in its various forms. So ADB, for example, in the state of Maharashtra, is supporting a pilot where we're looking at sensors on electricity pumps, sensors to measure rainfall patterns, sensors to look at groundwater levels, aquifer mapping, and try and work out how farmers could potentially be irrigating. Would it make sense for them to irrigate based on patterns on rainfall forecasting? Would it make sense to irrigate based on what's happening with the aquifer? So those are important decisions that need to be taken, and probably for the first time we're actually able to get data being generated on some of this, which would be useful to kind of escalate from the ground all the way to key decision makers, in capital cities, for them to be able to set policy. So for me, I think beyond technology and finance, it's the role of institutions. It's about trying to break silos and going for solutions that kind of fit multiple purposes, and finally trying to make sense of data and use it for decision making on policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Len, for that. Really, I guess, from your experience, that really a lot of issues that need to be taken into account, in addition to those financial, technology, and so on. Another question that to our panel members, maybe mainly the I don't know if Len can also answer this. I think this is a question related to the mainly to this sovereign country. Just want to know, because we are not discussing this session discussing this say rural clean energy contributions in meeting in the national NDC meeting target. So my question maybe is really related to this title. Say to what extent or how important or how much contribution that in your country and your country NDCs that you will this clean rural energy will make a contribution. I know that many countries actually the fossil fuel is still large amount, so energy efficiency in those large industrial facilities still make the most important contribution. I guess this is a case for many countries. And about looking forward 10 years, 20 years, this rural clean energy development. So usually from your estimation, then how important this would be, or how important this rural energy, rural clean energy development on your national agenda to meet this NDCs goals. So I just want to understand clearly. In particular, if Len, you know something from the countries, the India, you can also share. But I believe Mr. Udin and Mr. Han will know a lot on this. Can we start maybe from Mr. Udin? I cannot hear. Maybe your audio not open.
Yeah, my audio is open. Please repeat the question.
Oh, repeat question. My question: how this rural energy development, how important of this agenda is on the table of the government to meet this NDC's target?
Yeah, we have your unconditional contribution to NDC. It is 5% from BAU levels by 2030, and your conditional 50% reduction of GHG emission from BAU levels by 20 and same time. So as I said, we have at this moment your 630 megawatt in your generation, and we have your about solar parks, 11 solar parks of capacity. As I said, it is about your 800 megawatt under construction, and your 1800 megawatt you're under planning. So we have another your government your expectation that we will have 10% of our from your renewable resources by 2021, and I think the government is working on that way.
Thank you very much. Very clear. I think clearly that this will play a very important role. Let's hear the opinion from Mr. Hannin on the case of.
Thank you, Mr. Lu. I guess I cannot speak on behalf of the government, but when you are looking at the numbers right now, renewable energy in Indonesia contributes only about 9% of the energy mix. So, and this is far beyond the commitment of 23% renewable energy target by 2025, which is 4 more years. Yeah. So whether this issue is important or not, I will leave it to the government. But the numbers saying that it's going to be difficult to achieve. Although we have to compliment the government effort in rural electrifications. In the past 2 years before COVID-19, the rural electrification has reached about 98 or about 99%. Or their ratio, electrification ratio, about 99 or 98%. And we do fully aware that remaining 1% is going to be very challenging, consider these locations and also Indonesian geographical conditions. Hence, the government already come up with several strategies like solar home system deployment. In this coming year, they're also planning to do battery charging stations on rural areas, and also working together with the utility company called PLN to also take a looking into these off-grid solutions. So certainly there are efforts, but whether we can achieve that 23%, we leave it to the time being.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hannin. Also quite clear. I think sure, not necessarily to speak on behalf of the government. Just share those information. I guess they will be really very useful information. Len, can you share something maybe from India? Not necessarily I said to speak on behalf of the government. You are the I guess you know a lot. You work in there a long time. Just share the information or share your observation.
Yeah, no, I think it's critically important. I mean, if you really look at it, and this is going back to some of the work we had looked at in some of these places, you know, if you have per capita electricity consumption levels of 600, 700 units a year in remote rural areas, when the world average is close to about 3,000, there's only one way that's going to go. It's going to go up, and the second part, therefore, is if that consumption goes up, even with all the filters around, trying to keep it efficient and, bringing in whatever else could be done, the real challenge is how do you ensure it stays clean? And that's the part, at least from a lot of the discussions that we've been having in South Asia, we are seeing a lot of political commitments coming in to support clean energy in a big way, particularly for rural areas. So be it the 100,000 megawatt solar plan that India is doing, or 40% of the capacity by 2030, a large part of it will actually be targeted towards meeting demand in rural areas where the growth is expected. Solar is one aspect. I mean, there's a lot of other renewable work happening in the South Asian region, particularly with hydropower, particularly with wind, with biomass. So all of these, have their roles in terms of trying to ensure that the rural mix stays green. We're seeing countries coming out and putting out their willingness to, achieve some of these ambitious targets. What's important is now figuring out what can be done to deploy the capital and address the other barriers in terms of getting this to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Len, for sharing your thoughts. Okay, I think we are running out of our time. I guess we will have to conclude our session discussion. I'm not going to do very long summary, but just maybe for share some of my observation in 1 minute, if possible. So this from this session that we hear this introduction from our distinguished speakers on the case in Indonesia and India, Bangladesh, and also other observations. pity that we missed the presentation by Mr. Wang from China. But I guess all this presentation can be downloaded from website, from ADB website on this. I guess I just use several keywords that maybe to sum of this. One, that we can see a lot very successful case for clean energy, rural energy development in area in all different countries. So this meaning that we can really develop a good clean and low carbon rural energy in all countries. So this is one very clear conclusion. Second, we can see also a huge challenges, even in addition to those finance challenge, technology challenge, and also many others, including those law institution and so on. So the capacity building is also very important for many developing countries. This is second point. The third point is related that the rural clean energy development is fundamentally important for all developing countries, not only for the social economic development, but also for them to achieve their target, their goal of the NDC under the Paris Agreement. So this is also quite important. Actually, from my own observation, that in the coming decades, 10 or 20 or 30 years, this rural clean energy development actually should be paid more and more attention by government, by international organizations, also by experts, so that if we really want to achieve the goal of poverty reduction, the economic development, environmental protection, and also meeting the target of climate change protection, then we will have to pay enough attention to this rural clean and low carbon energy development. So this is something that I think we can draw from this session discussion, and I hope that this platform will enhance this knowledge sharing. I also hope that the next session and this next version of this Asia Clean Energy Forum, I mean next year, then this rural the clean energy development will continue to be on the agenda, and then we will continue to share more this successful experience, also those lessons, so that then we can really promote this rural clean energy development in Asia and the Pacific countries. So with this, I would really like to thanks to all speakers and panel members for your contribution and your dedication to share this really very informative idea. Also, many thanks to the ASIF Secretariat to help to make this happen. I think this is really challenging. Even for me, I feel I tested for many times. I also found some challenging, but very good is that we make it. So thank you very much to the Secretariat. With this, I will declare that this session 1.2 on this rural clean energy development is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.